these questions around corporate power and gross inequality, as I mentioned, have been front and center since the pandemic started because of these astronomical profits we're seeing. But people are doing some pretty impressive mental gymnastics too to avoid actually calling it what it is. And in the last 2 years especially, we've seen a new constellation of really bizarre conspiracy theories in terms like replacement theory or the Great Replacement, the Great Reset. They've become household words. A new poll this week from Abacus Data showed that these ideas may be even more popular than many of us are willing to admit. Let's take a look at some of what they found. In this first graphic, you'll see on the top line, we've got 44% of the people in the poll saying that they believe that, quote, big events like wars, recessions, and the outcomes of elections are controlled by small groups of people working in secret against us. Some 41% on the second line think that, quote, much of our lives are being controlled by plots hatched in secret places. And then there's a disturbing 37% who think that, quote, there's a group of people in this country who are trying to replace native-born Canadians with immigrants who agree with their political views. This is also known as the Great Replacement theory, the neo-Nazi conspiracy theory that was also behind the recent mass killing in a predominantly Black neighborhood in Buffalo. For me, one of the things that was interesting about the poll was actually that when you look at the detailed breakdowns of the demographics of people who support these ideas, it's true, absolutely, the majority are Pierre Poilievre supporters, they're People's Party supporters, they're on the fringes, on the far right. But there's also something like 40%, for example, of NDP, Liberal, and Green Party supporters who believe that, small groups of people are working in secret against us. There's almost 30% in the NDP, Liberals, and Green Party supporters who believe in the replacement theories. That's not insignificant either. And Elle, I guess I wanted to hear your thoughts on that. I mean, these are elements that are also in our own backyard, no?
Well, first of all, let's name what is really the dog whistle in small groups of people. They mean Jews, right? So this is the old Jewish conspiracy, Jews of the New World Order stuff. And I think we need to separate the conspiracy element from the kernels of truth that rest within this. So if you say there are groups of people that plot our demise, you mean the elites that we just talked about? Like, you mean how corporate elites and politicians actually do share an agenda? And of course, that doesn't have to take place by sitting in a room smoking a cigar and like everybody shakes hands and agrees. It takes place because they have a shared interest, right? So you don't need to meet in a room in order to understand that elites in our communities as well share those interests. This is part of neoliberalism. It's a shared interest across media, across the professional managerial class, across corporate elites, across political elites, military elites, right? So that is true. And that obviously people have recognized on the left for generations. So we can't call that a conspiracy theory. In Halifax, we have an international security forum where people quite literally get together in the West and plot the path for war, right? But that is, I think, a different matter than what is implied in some of these theories, which is like the idea of a Jewish conspiracy that, Jewish people also, of course, control Black people in particular, that we're under some controlling Jewish intelligence. The idea that this, takes place in this particular way, like that it's quite literally like, let's go screw over the working class today, But I think we have to understand that there are roots to this. So I think the way the questions are framed perhaps doesn't necessarily tease out what they're really trying to get to. In some way, I think the questions in these polls are perhaps badly framed because one can believe that, there are elites that have bad intentions for us without believing that that is Jewish people or something, right? So I think we need to also tease out what we're talking about here, because what makes the thing a conspiracy theory isn't the recognition of how power works in our life. It's this idea that it becomes this kind of grand overarching theory that replaces critical thought in all places in order to create one narrative.